Hi, this is David Orlofsky. Welcome back to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Over 150 of these we've done already. Pretty amazing, huh? Anyway, I want to start with our sponsorship. Dear Rabbi Orlofsky, I greatly enjoy listening to your podcast and even sometimes go back to listen to older episodes. I do sometimes too. This episode is sponsored anonymously as a chus for 3 couples I know, and they should each have a happy and healthy child this year, b'sha'a tova. And she asks, please do not read the names of the couples, but I will be mitchaven, if you'll give me 1 second. Should all be Zaycha Zereshal Kayoma, and should be blessed with Kinderlach and Yetz Hashem. So thank you for that, and it should be a big schus for them. Okay, we're talking about Tefila, on the subject of Tefila. Daven for me, and I'll daven for you. Yeah, on the subject of children. It's very effective, very effective. Tefila, davening for other people. Rashi says by Sarah davened for Avimelech, and she got answered first. So when you daven for somebody else, yeah, it's a very powerful thing. So I'll daven for you, and daven for me. Anyway, so 100%. All right, we're talking about Kavana. We're talking about working on concentration. My brother-in-law of Dovid Lichtman, I heard him speaking once, and he said something that I found particularly incisive that I've really tried to incorporate. He says, when you daven, the most important line of Tefillah is not even part of Shemona Esrei. It's right at the beginning. Hashem sfasai tiftach, upi yagiti lasecha. Hashem, open my mouth so that I can daven. The first tefillah is, I should be able to daven. And it sounds a little strange. I have to daven that I should be able to daven. Because siyata deshmaya, when it comes to tefillah, is such an important thing. I'm going to tell you a story. It's kind of mind-blowing. I heard this from somebody many, many years ago. I never tried to verify it. I'm not Pesach Kron, who actually goes and checks out all his stories. I hear something and I say it over. But there was a girl in the Yerushalayim. And there's this idea of being able to go to the Kaisel, go to the Western Wall for 40 days and daven 40 days straight to be able to get something. I'm in a story inside of a story. There's a fellow, Rabbi Stefansky, who gives a very large Daf Yomi shir. In person, he gets a very large, it's in Beit Shemesh. In person, he gets very large attendance, and there are many people who listen online, and if you join, they give you a free Art School Gemara. It's a tremendous shir. So I spoke at their Siyam on Yuma just before the 9 days, and he told a story. He said, I wanted to do this skula, to be able to daven 40 days. And he says, it's not an easy thing. You have to go at the same time of day, every single day. And so you have to work out Shabbos and Erev Shabbos and Motzi Shabbos. And when do you go? And how do you handle it? And there's many conditions to be able to make this work. He says, but I went and I did it for 40 days. And what did I ask for? I wanted to be able to have a shir where I could teach Shas. That's what he said. So he said, so when I was in America, I had a small, little chabura in Brooklyn. And I said, okay, this is, Kodesh Baruch Hu gave it to me. Gave me my request. Because I had no idea what he had in store for me in the future when I would come to Eretz Yisrael and I would end up with hundreds of people listening to my shir, which is a tremendous thing. And it made a big impression on me, because if you could go to the Kaisel for 40 days and daven for something, is that what you would choose? Obviously, I never went for 40 days to the Kaisel. And if I did, I wouldn't have chosen that. And that's why my Daf Yomi Shir is not so big. But it is a lot of fun. But I just remember, I thought, what an amazing thing. I don't know if you could go, what would you ask for? We talked about this a couple of podcasts ago when we talked about, Vakosha, what would you ask for? Yeah. So it was a girl in the Vay, and she asked to be able to daven with Kavana. She went 40 days to the Kaisel to daven that she should be able to have Kavana. She reached day 20-something and she stopped. And a friend said, why? And she said, because I would open up the siddur and my whole body would start shaking and tears would start pouring down my face. It was too intense. I couldn't handle it. Real Kavana? Yeah, you have, it's tremendous. If you can reach it. Rabbi Akiva would daven, and he'd find himself on the other side of a river. The Gemara says, if you're davening Shemona Esrei, and a snake curls around your foot, well, don't stop davening, because the snake's not going to bite you unless you instigate it. If it's a scorpion, okay, you have to walk away. But the snake, what are you worried about? I don't know. I find that when I'm davening and there's a fly flying around my head, that's enough to kill whatever little bit of kavanah I had going in. But to ignore a snake, that's really something else. But the first thing is you have to daven that I can daven. You have to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, help me be able to daven, because you need siyata d'shmaya for everything in this world. My Rabbi Orlofsky, I had the schus of having him as a Rebbe when I came to Israel my first year. And he told an interesting story. He'd been teaching in Chadarim for many years. And they wanted him to teach Mishnayos to a 5th grade class. And he was like, I could do that with my eyes closed. It's very simple. At that point in my life, I had enough experience and I felt confident enough. And I had a terrible year. I wasn't matzliach. And then I realized, because every time before I would teach, I would daven that I should be matzliach. And that time I was so confident, I didn't daven for hatzlacha. I've had the schus of hearing Rabbi Orlofsky speak many times, the Rav Moshe Matisyahu. And every time he gets up, I've seen this dozens of times. The first thing he does is he goes over to the Aron Kodesh, takes the paroches, and says a little Tefila before he starts. I've spoken many, many times in my life. I'm nervous every single time. And I mentioned a few podcasts ago when I talked about Haidah, how I look for something good that's happened in my life when I daven. If I speak and it goes over well, I always go right to that, because it's all siyata d'shmaya. Listen, I have certain speeches that I give that I know are very successful, and sometimes I give it to a crowd and it's okay, and sometimes it doesn't go over. Now, sometimes they're a difficult audience, but that doesn't help. In other words, if you're a speaker, you can't say, I gave a great speech. It's your fault that you didn't enjoy it. I mean, you could do that, but you won't get invited back again. Yeah. Being a speaker is probably the hardest profession, because if you're a teacher, so you can show, I taught the material, I gave out the test, I gave out my marks. If you're a plumber, I fixed the toilet. Yeah, flush. You see it works. It works. Yeah. You don't believe me? Bring in another plumber. Have him check my work. These things are absolute. When it comes to a speaker, it's all siyata d'shmaya. Either people like you or they don't like you. Either they enjoy what you had to say or they don't. And it doesn't matter that it worked 20 other times. This is the time that it matters. And if that audience didn't get it, it's up to you. When I used to teach in Discovery, so one time, it's very dramatic, and the classes are more or less worked out, and I'd given them many times. They brought in this this Sephardi program, Eduta Mizrach. And I'm going through this stuff, and they don't care. They're throwing paper airplanes. I'm coming to all the dramatic parts, not working. So I switched, because I listened, here in Eretz Yisrael, we have from radio stations, and every now and then you listen to one of these Sephardi Magidim. They have a particular standard of speaking that I would never really feel comfortable with, but desperate times demand desperate measures. So I said, so what do we learn from everything? Do you want to go to Gehenna? Do you want Gehenna? And they all stopped. They're like, Emet, Rav, Emet. I said, what's going to be? You want your wife to be faithful? You want your children on drugs? Do you want your children on drugs? No, Rav, no, Rav. And the whole place turned around. They were kissing my hand at the end. It was just an amazing thing. And I was just imitating what these guys do on the radio. It doesn't come naturally to me. But I told this story once upon a time that this education expert was meeting with the teachers and says, let's go around the room and everyone say what you teach. So I teach history, I teach chemistry, I teach, English, I teach. So he says, nobody gave the right answer. You teach students. And so when you get up to speak, I'm not getting up to give a speech. Otherwise, you could just listen to a recording. I have to speak to the people who are there. I have to figure out what they want to hear and what they need to hear. And that takes siyata d'shmaya. It's completely up to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because you can get up and give the same exact speech to two audiences, and one place changes their lives, and the other one, So you got to daven before you get up to speak. So you got to daven before you daven. Hashem sfasai tiftach. Open up my lips. Let me be able to say the words. Because it's a gift. It's a gift to be able to daven and to be able to have that kavana, and it's not easy. Now, what are some of the things we can do? And I've mentioned this in the past. I have ADD. For me to concentrate is a real avoda anytime and about anything. So for me, it's a particular challenge. But even those of you who are, more educationally secure than I am, and don't have all of these handicaps, it's still a challenge. So, very often in shul, you'll see in front of the Shliach Tzibur, there's a little sign, Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. And there was a time that everybody had a little piece of cloth that they would have, Shavisi Hashem Lenegdi Tamid. I am talking to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's very important. I have to remember that Hashem is really there and I'm talking to Hashem. What an opportunity. It's a tremendous focus to be able to say, Hashem is right here listening to me now. And even if that's all I walk away with, if I daven, then all I focused on was the fact that I'm standing before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is a tremendous madrega. I said years ago, when a person's becoming from, they go through 3 stages. First, they daven very slow because they don't know what they're saying. I used to run NCSY, and we used to have the transliterated benchers. At the end of the meal, Birkat HaMazon, people are following along, sounding it out in the English. Baruch Ato. Yeah. Melech Ha'olam. Melech. That sound is a little difficult for people. So it takes a while to learn how to do it because it's a struggle. And then after a while, we get so good at it, it's rote. We push the davening button. And that's it. I had a guy who was becoming about tshuva, and I was davening it at home. I remember what happened. It was a snowstorm or something. I don't remember. I couldn't get my mile and a quarter to go to shul. I was at my house. And he says, you can't daven mincha and read the paper? And I said, no. He goes, oh, because I said, this other guy, he was reading the paper, was davening. And I said, how can you read the paper? He goes, yes, davening, I just push the little davening button, and it doesn't, it doesn't bother me at all. The davening is going on behind me. That's why sometimes you can see people davening on their phones. And now I'm being facetious, because when I say they're davening on their phones, what I mean is that they happen to have the text of the siddur on their phone. So they don't have to carry a siddur with them. But I said, oh, that's great. You could probably just program your phone to daven for you. So you don't even have to daven. Just set it and, say, oh, mincha's 4:00, and push the little button and it'll daven for you. So the guy says, no, I need a minion. I said, no problem. It can call 9 other phones and they'll all daven together. In fact, you can put it on vibrate so it'll even chuckle for you. But, first you daven slow because you just don't know what you're saying. And then once you get it down, you daven fast. Then you have to learn how to daven slow again. But it's the same thing with anything. When you're learning how to dance, you're spending the time learning all of the little moves, and then you can do it automatically. And then you have to add the feeling into it. That's the difference between a person who's dancing by rote and a person who's putting themselves into it. It's a whole different thing. And the same thing is true about speaking. The same thing is true about teaching. You can just do it, or you can do it with a tremendous amount of feeling. You can put yourself into it. And that takes a lot more effort. So this is the problem. The problem is when people do it by rote, what the Navi calls mitzvahs anoshim elimudai. They do it out of habit. And they don't stop to think about it. When I was younger and I was first learning how to daven, so there was a process, and after a while, I got it down pretty good. But comes Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur was a mystery. What do we do now? What do we say now? What is this? What is that? Now, Baruch Hashem, I'm at an age where even Yom Kippur is rote. I've done it so many times. Yeah, there's no mystery left in it anymore. But it's not supposed to be the mystery. Mitzvah Hashem, if you get married, you'll know this. If you're already married, you'll know this. For the most part, you wake up every morning and it's the same person there. Okay, so sometimes people have multiple personality disorder, and then you get to be with different people during the day. But for the most part, it's just the same person. What makes that relationship special is not that every day there's a new person there. What makes it special is the understanding of that person and working with that person, and the repetition that comes from being with that person. Shemona Esrei is the same Shemona Esrei 3 times a day, most of the days of the year, except for holidays, because every day is basically the same day. You're married to the same person. You've got the same children. You got the same parents. You got the same job. Most days are the same. And so you have to learn how to make that meaningful. I apologize in advance for a secular reference. But it's such a great mashal. I mentioned this once, that somebody once asked Moshe Shapiro if you're allowed to read English literature. So he says, well, if you hold it, it's a chachma. So someone says it's a tremendous chachma because you can use it as a mashal. But there was a film with Bill Murray where he's a weatherman, and he predicts the wrong weather, and he has to go to Pasquaney, Pennsylvania for Groundhog's Day. You're going to bring the ground. He hates his job. He hates this. It's a miserable place. It's a miserable town. And it's like the worst day of his life. He wakes up in the morning and it's the same day. And day after day, he wakes up and it's the same exact day. And he says at one point, I remember I was on vacation in the Caribbean. I was on the beach. I had a cold drink, Why couldn't I live that day over and over again? Why does it have to be Groundhog's Day in Pasquaney, Pennsylvania? The worst day of my life. There's this insurance agent who comes over and hassles him. He falls into a puddle. Everything is just terrible. Just terrible day. Yeah. And he wakes up the next day, and it's the same day again. He tries killing himself. He tries killing himself in different ways. Doesn't help. Wakes up, it's the same day. He tries stealing money, buying himself a car, things like that. Wakes up, it's the same day. Starts over and over again. And at some point, he realizes this is the only day I have. And he works to make that day the best day of his life. And at the very end, it is the most successful day possible. And he says to one of the other characters, this was the best day of my life. And he wakes up the next day, and it's tomorrow. I read once an article, somebody made a cheshbon of what happens in the film. It had to have been about 40 years he was stuck on this one day, reliving this same day for 40 years. And I thought, that's such a brilliant mashal, because that's what every one of us do. We live the same day over and over again until we get it right, and then we move on to the next day. And every day are the same challenges, and we're more or less the same person, and we more or less have to make ourselves the best day out of what we have. And that's it. Fantasy is fun. It's fun to pretend, what if I had a different existence? What if I was a different person? What if I hate to keep going back to the same theme. What if I get bitten by a radioactive spider? Which, by the way, they changed it. They retrograded it to a DNA-altered spider because, Stan Lee, Jewish guy, he said, I guess if you get radioactive blood, you'd probably die. I don't think it would make you stronger, But you're not becoming a superhero. You're not winning the lottery. It's going to be the same day with the same challenges over and over again. You have to get up in the morning. You got to go to shul. You got to go to work. You got to work with your marriage, work on your kids, work on your avodas Hashem. Worry about how you're going to pay the bills. Every day is going to be more or less the same day. And that's what Shmona Esrei is. It's expressing truth in our lives. That's why they had to be written by Nevi'im. It has to be something where we're working within what we've got, because that's all we have. So we approach a day and we say, okay, I have to take advantage of this day. So you're right, at the beginning, davening is very exciting. What do I say? When do I stand? When do I sit? When do I this? I remember I was a kid in school. We used to daven in the classroom. In 7th grade, we moved into the minyan. Where there were 8th graders already bar mitzvah. They had a regular minyan, And at some point, everyone went like this. And the 7th graders, we were sitting in the front, 7th, 8th, and 9th, And we all looked around and went, what's going on? So we all went down and we went like this, So I asked one of the 9th graders, I said, what's that? I don't know. I came in 7th grade and I saw everybody doing it, so I started doing it too. It's an amazing thing to say, how am I going to make what I have meaningful? Tefila is set up in a way for us to be able to build ourselves up. It doesn't start at the beginning. Psuki de Zimra, says the Mogen Avram. Lizamer can mean to sing. But in Hilchos Shabbos, Zamer means to prune a tree. And so the Mogen Avram says Psuki de Zimra means it's a process of removing all of the foreign thoughts from you so that you can focus on it. And this is so unfortunate. A lot of people miss Psuki de Zimra. They come late. They do the quickie, Baruch Shem Ashrei Yishtabach. Moshe Feinstein says, if you're going to do that, at least throw in Mizmor Soda. It doesn't take any more time, Throw that in too, yeah. That's it. They'll add a halukah or two, But they're missing it. But Psukei de Zimra is there to Psukei de Zimra. These are the prakim that we say that can trim away all of those thoughts and help us to focus. So, first there are the brachas. And in the time of the Gemara, you said those brachas as you woke up. I understand Sfardim still do it that way. I'm not sure, but that's what someone told me once. Yeah? You open your eyes, you say Pokei Chivrim. You sit up, you say Matir Sarim. You stand up, you say Zokev Kefufim. You get dressed, you say Malbish Aramim. Yeah? You say the brachas as you go through the process. So when you get to shul, what are you starting with? You're starting with korbanos. A lot of people have never even seen korbanos. You're describing the korbanos. Why? Because the Gemara in Brachos says, Tefila, is it based on the Tefilos that the Avos said? Avraham started saying Shachris, Yitzchak started saying Mincha, Yaakov started saying Ma'ariv. Is it based on that? Or is it based on the korbanos? What's the difference? Ma'ariv. Because there was no korban at night. So, therefore, there was the korban, daily korban tamid of the morning, daily korban of the afternoon. And then there was the leftover things they would burn at night, but that wasn't an obligation. If they burnt everything during the day, they wouldn't have to. And that's why the question is, Ma'ariv v'chiv or Rishursa. But everyone agrees that the way it was set up was based on the korbanos. The times were based on the korbanos. A lot of the halachas were the korbanos. So when we say the korbanos, we're starting off by saying that that's what my tefillah is. My tefillah is bringing a korban to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's a real intense thing. Let me tell you something about korbanos. I always say that one of the hardest things of Jewish education is to make it relevant. A lot of things are not relevant. Kids will tell you this all the time. Rebbe, why do I have to learn this piece of Gemara? I don't have an ox, and I'm not planning on buying one. And I don't run through the street with pictures. And if I marry a woman, it'll be with a ring, not with a piece of silk of indeterminate value. And if I divorce her, it'll be based in, I won't throw the get from my roof into her courtyard where it catches on fire on the way down. Why am I learning this? Relevance. Relevance is so important. And I always, when I teach, try to show how things are relevant. So when you do Zvachim, at the beginning, you have this whole long section of Pigel. What's Pigel? If the Kohen has the wrong Kavana when he's bringing the korban is puzzle. He did everything right. He did the shechita, he caught the dam, he threw it on the mizbeach, he took the right parts out, he burned them in the mizbeach, did everything, but he had the wrong machshava, the whole thing is wrong. So the machshava determines the korban. So first we say korbanos. After the korbanos, you come to ketores. That's the incense. The incense is a higher level. The incense gets taken into the Beis HaMikdash. The korbanos are brought on the outside mizbeach, but there's a special mizbeach inside just for the ketores. Ketores was something that was considered more spiritual, even higher than this. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu breathed in a spirit of life, and therefore ketores, which goes in through the nose, has a higher level of kedusha. That's why on Saturday night, when we lose our neshama yisera, we smell besamim, we smell spices to revive us. It's a spiritual experience. And that's why when Yosef is being brought down to Mitzrayim, being sold as a slave, the people who are taking him down are taking nice-smelling spices. Usually they take like kerosene or things that smell bad. That's what you got to worry about? He's in chains being dragged out as a slave? At least he shouldn't have to smell bad things. At least that, because that goes straight into your neshama, what you smell. And I remember Moshe Shapiro said once, "La hagid baboike chasdecha." The morning is chesed. He says you can tell it just by nature. The world smells better in the morning. And I remember he said once, he goes, even verstunkenem New York in the morning smells good. Yeah. So you go through the Ketores. Then you go to the Pesukei de Zimra. Now you do the Birchas Kriya Shema and Kriya Shema. What's Kriya Shema? Kriya Shema is Yichud Hashem. I am one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then we do Tachnan. That's the one where you go like this, where ideally you're supposed to do it on your left hand, but if you have your tefillin there, you move it to your right hand. But by Mincha, when you don't have tefillin, you do it on your left hand because you're turning away. You're turning away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm starting to move away. When I said Shmona Esrei, I was standing like a malach in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the Ikar Avoda right there. I'm in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. I'm in the base of Mikdash. I'm in this place. What does that mean? It says the Chasidim Rishonim, the Gemara says, spent an hour before Tefila. Tefila was Shmona Esrei. An hour in Tefila. They spent an hour saying Shmona Esrei. And an hour coming down from the experience. When they davened, they were so far out of this world, it took them a whole hour to come back down from that spiritual meditative state that they had reached. An unbelievable thing. So, Tachnan is, we're starting to come back down. Ashrei, again, like we did in Pesukei de Zimra, it's sort of like we built up to this crescendo called Shmona Esrei, called the Amida. And now, Tachnan, we turn away. And Ashrei, we go back to Pesukei de Zimra. And at the end, we do Ein Kelokenu. And we do the Ketores. But we don't go all the way back down to the Korban. You know why? Because every time you daven, you walk away on a higher level. So I started at Korbanos, and I worked up to Ketores, and I worked up to Pesukei de Zimra, I worked up to Kriya Shema, I worked up to Shmona Esrei. And then I turn away by Tachnan, and then I'm back down to Ashrei, and then I go back to Ketores, but I don't go beyond that. Because every davening is transformational. There's a halacha. When you walk into a shul, you shouldn't start davening until you've walked Dalet Amos or waited the amount of time it takes to walk Dalet Amos, 4 Amos. Why? Because I've seen this. People walk in, pivot, start Shmona Esrei. You can't. You need time to prepare yourself. You can't achieve something without some preparation. And that's why these people walk in last minute and throw on their talis and tefillin and mumble, Baruch Shema and Ashrei, and they jump in. There's no way that tefillah is going to be as meaningful to them because they didn't spend the time preparing. In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, there was an area outside of Yerushalayim where you would stop and meditate before you went into Yerushalayim. You're going into Yerushalayim. You can't just walk in. You need time. You have to prepare yourself. You have to think, what am I doing? Rabbi Orlofsky tells the story publicly, so I feel comfortable repeating it. He says, I used to teach in Eshet Torah, and I would take a cab to Shar Yafo, Shar Ashba, at the Dung Gate over there, and go in through the security. And I ran up the stairs to Eshet Torah. And one time I realized I didn't even turn and look at the kaisel. That's the Makom HaMikdash. I had my back to it. I was just running to get to class. I have to stop and think, where am I going? Today, you can't, very, very hard to park in the old city, and during the day, you can't even get in unless you're a resident. So at least on Rosh Chodesh, we try to go, me and my wife. Sometimes we try to go more often, but certainly at Rosh Chodesh. So you have to park in Mamilla, and then you have a nice long walk till you get there. You have time to prepare yourself. Think about it. You don't just walk over to the hotel. Don't just go and here's the wall. You have to prepare yourself. You can't, if you want to have meaningful davening, you can't just walk into shul and open the siddur and start davening. You have to invest time. Kavana does not come automatically. You need time to sit down and to focus yourself. And for some people, it might be nothing more than walking Daled Amos. At least what the Chachamim gave us, Psukei de Zimra, take that time to say something, to focus, to lizamer, to cut away all of the things that are interrupting us so that we're free to be able to focus on what we have to do. But there's no way, as I mentioned last time, when you're going to chap a quickie mincha and make that a truly meaningful tefillah. You have to invest time. So, Hashem svasai tiftach. Hashem, help me daven. Shavisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. No, I'm standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Psukei de Zimra, take your time to remove all of the distractions from you and understand that tefillah is set up in a way to build up to something. I have to go step by step by step. Yaakov Avinu sees a ladder, and the malachim oilim v'yardim. They have wings. Why don't they just fly? Because there's no way to get to Shemayim by flying. You got to climb a ladder. You have to go step by step. Korbanos, Ketores, Psukei de Zimra, Kriya Shema, Amida. And then you go back down. Tachnun, Ashrei, Ketores. It takes steps. It takes effort. So we're going to talk about this more next time, but this at least is a starting point for us. There's a few techniques, a few ideas that we can use to try to start to make it more meaningful. And now we're at the question and answer part of our program. Anonymous asks, I have to say, Anonymous, you've managed to send in the most questions. What do you think about giving your kids things that you perceive as luxuries or extras, if everyone in the class actually has it? For example, weekly pizza day in school. Every child in my daughter's kindergarten class has been ordering pizza. Do I get it for my kid so she won't feel resentful being the only one left out? Or will she learn resilience and my value of saving special things for special occasions? Wow. What a hard question. The world's gone crazy. Yeah. We live in a crazy world. And they've done studies. It's very interesting. And they found that kids are more influenced by what their friends think than what their parents think. I did an informal study. I used to ask guys who were learning yeshiva how they chose the yeshiva. And most of the time the answer was, that's where my friends were going. It's, our role as parents becomes more limited. Now, you asked the question very well. What about luxuries or extras? Meaning, we're not talking about something that we consider to be, in absolute terms, evil. My kid wants a smartphone. I don't want my kid to have a smartphone. I don't even know why your kid needs a phone at all. Someone said, well, you can't live today without a phone. Surprise! For thousands of years of human history, people lived without having a phone. When cell phones were starting to become more widespread, I was under a lot of pressure to get a cell phone. And I said, why? And they said, because then people could reach you anytime, any place. I said, remind me again, why would I want this? What do I need it for? I'll call you when I get home. No, I don't have to talk to you at any time. I'm not available all the time. Sometimes I'm traveling, and it's okay. This has been the big fight on planes because we have the technology that our cell phones could work on the plane, and people are like, give me a little space where I don't have to listen to people talking on the phone day and night. I don't have to have people hacking me all the time. At least I'm on a plane. Leave me alone. On Amtrak, there are certain no cell phone cars. You want to talk on your cell phone, go over there, hack each other. Everyone could sit there and talk and knock themselves out. You go out to eat to see two people talking to each other on a cell phone. So I'm not talking about buying your kid a phone or something else that is perceived as being negative. Pizza. I'm not going to say pizza is evil. I could say it may not be the healthiest choice, but few and far between are the families that don't take their kids out for pizza. What's bothering me about this example is if everyone in the class is getting pizza and she's not, then she's going to definitely feel persecuted. If it's a question of some people have it and some people don't, that's different. When my son was in Cheder, so this story is at least 20 years old, they asked us not to send the kids with a manah chama for lunch. What's a manah chama? It's what in English, in America, they call a cup of soup. It's like a little cup, and it's got some like noodles or instant mashed potatoes or soup mix, whatever it is, and you add hot water to it, and it's a big treat. And they said, please don't send your kids with this because there are some families that can't afford it. And you're going to make them feel bad. So do I have to get my kid a manah chama if there's a few rich kids in class who have manah chama? No. No, I don't have to do that. The problem comes in with what if everyone is doing it? The whole school is going on a ski trip. So do I tell my kid, I'm not spending money for a ski trip? Now, I know some parents who tell their kids, no problem. You want to go on the ski trip? You gotta get the money. Go and babysit, rake leaves, whatever it is, get the money. I'm not paying for a ski trip. Will a kid become resentful? Yeah, maybe. And that's why when it comes to parenting, I always say you got to choose your battles. You got to decide what is worth fighting or not. But it's no question about it. When you have a kid who gets everything they want as soon as they want it, a new book comes out, I want that. This comes out, I want that. What happens when a birthday comes around? What am I supposed to do? They have everything already. So, what, I up the ante, find something new to be able to get? It becomes very problematic. We have a lot of kids, a lot of grandchildren. And it's tricky when it comes to a birthday. So, more or less, the minhag that we made was the Shabbos closest to your birthday, we get a cake. We make a cake, decorate it. It's on Shabbos, so you have to be careful how you decorate it. You decorate it in a way that there's no pictures or writing or things like this. This has been a big challenge. I once bought these cookie cutters that make letters. So we'd make little cookies and say happy birthday and put it on so we don't have a problem of cutting through. I bought these little like banners that say happy birthday. You can stick it on the cake, There's I bought there's little sugar letters that you can buy, spell out happy birthday so-and-so, But, set it up in such a way, and that's what we do with the cake. There's a certain uniformity. The problem is that these things only work if everybody plays by the rules. I don't know if everybody remembers that at one point the Gedolim got together and made the wedding takonis. You're only allowed to serve this. You're only allowed to serve that. You're only allowed to invite so many people. You're only allowed to have so many instruments. Now, they made all kinds of takanas, and nobody kept it. So what good does it do? Nobody's going to keep it. And they built in, a little loophole, because they said, of course, we leave it to each Rosh Hashiva and Gadol to decide whether or not they're going to go. So I've got a donor who's not following the rules, but I want to go because, the guy gives me money. So it's in my best interest to go. So it only works if everybody is on board. When I lived in Far Rockaway, so Shayoshev, the yeshiva, had some very wealthy people who davened there. They had some not such wealthy people. And if you wanted to make a kiddush, there was a standard kiddush. And if you wanted to make a fancy kiddush, no problem. Not here. Because it's not fair to the other people. So they would make a very poshut kiddush, and no matter who you were, this is the kiddush that you got. This is what you paid for, this is what you got. It was very simple, and everybody made the same kiddush. There are those who say the pshat that in Parshas Naso, we list what each nasi brought every day. And they brought the same exact thing. So why couldn't you just write, and also Shlomo ben Surdai, and also Gamliel ben Padatzur, and just say each nasi brought the same thing. To show you the godless, that nobody tried to do one upmanship on the person who went beforehand. That's what you brought. I'm not going to bring anything extra. I'll bring the same thing. So the answer is, when I teach Gemara, I always say there's only two answers to every question. It's a machlekes or it depends. This one is it depends. If it's something that everybody's doing and your kindergarten daughter is going to be the only one in class who brings a peanut butter and jelly sandwich while everybody else is eating pizza, the kid is going to feel deprived. You don't want a kid to feel deprived and feel like they're left out and feel weird. If there's some kid who, has a little sushi chef that makes them their little sushi in class, you know what I mean? And the parents send it along. You don't have to hire a sushi chef for your kid. It's okay. Not everyone has to get everything. But, you have to make a decision. If everybody's doing it and this has become mikubal, this is what everyone's doing, so you have no choice. You're kind of stuck. So it really depends on the situation. But if they come home and they say, everybody got themselves this designer outfit, I also want this designer outfit, you could say, I appreciate that. We're not in a position to be able to afford that. I wish I could. We're going to make sure you have nice clothes, clean clothes, but I'm not spending $300 on a sweater for you because your friends have that. It's just not happening. So it's a sensitive point, and you have to really try to figure out how in the way that it applies in each case. As much as you can keep things simple, then things become more chashuv. I remember hearing a story in Old Jerusalem when things were really tight. So the father would give each kid for Shabbos 3 shkede marak. These little tiny soup almonds that they put in their soup. Each one got 3. That was their treat. People couldn't afford more. And it was meaningful. And now, when you see kids take half a bowl of shkedi marak and pour it into their soup, parents will say, hey, why don't you have a little soup with shkedi marak, So, okay. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to limit how many treats are available and save them for special occasions, or just say, well, it's what everybody else is doing, and just give up. It's really up to you to make that decision. And that's it for this episode. And that's it. You can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can send me, contact me. You can make a comment. You can sponsor an episode. You can see some of the other material that we have there. And that's it for this episode. My name is David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.